Michael Carter, a retired cop, finally bought his dream home in upscale Atlanta, a stunning two-story with a sparkling pool. But his peace was shattered by Karen Thompson, a nosy, entitled neighbor who trespassed to use his pool, refusing to accept him as the owner due to her thinly veiled racism. Her antics escalated. Unauthorized pool parties, vandalism, and false complaints, pushing Michael to his limit. Using his police smarts, he rigged his pool with a harmless dye that turned Karen and her friends bright green when they swam uninvited, triggered by their fancy sunscreen. The viral video of their green exodus, paired with proof of her trespassing, ruined her reputation and real estate career, forcing her to move. Michael's pool became a neighborhood hub, fostering unity where Karen had sown division. His clever, dignified stand proved karma could be a splashy teacher. Now he floats in peace, a symbol of resilience. If you like stories like this, please subscribe to my channel for more and tell me where you're watching from. Michael Carter had spent 15 long, grueling years as a police officer, walking the beat, facing danger, and swallowing exhaustion just to keep his city safe. Every overtime shift, every missed family dinner, every penny pinched and saved, it all led to this moment. On a shimmering summer afternoon in an upscale Atlanta neighborhood, he stood in front of his dream house, a breathtaking two-story masterpiece that seemed to glow under the Georgia sun. His heart swelled with pride as he took it all in. The pristine white exterior, the wide windows promising light-filled days, and, best of all, the backyard oasis, a crystal-clear swimming pool that sparkled like a jewel. This wasn't just a house. It was a triumph, a testament to every sacrifice he'd made, every dream he'd clung to when the nights got too dark and the shifts too long. For Michael, a black man who'd grown up hearing his parents' whispered hopes of, one day, owning something this beautiful, this was more than bricks and mortar. It was legacy. The first time he stepped onto the property as its owner, he felt a rush of disbelief, like he'd slipped into someone else's life. He'd done it. After years of protecting and serving, of dodging bullets and de-escalating chaos, he'd carved out a slice of peace for himself in one of Atlanta's most prestigious neighborhoods. The air smelled of jasmine and possibility, and as he ran his hand along the smooth edge of the pool, he could almost hear his mother's voice, soft and proud, saying, "You made it, son." This was the kind of place his parents could only dream of, a place where the lawns were manicured, the streets quiet, and the future felt wide open. He'd worked his whole life for this, and now, reclining in a lounge chair by that glistening pool, the warm breeze kissing his skin, he let himself believe he deserved it. That pool wasn't just water. It was a symbol of everything he'd overcome. Every ripple caught the sunlight and threw it back like a victory shout. He closed his eyes, letting the tranquility wash over him, feeling the tension of his old life melt away. This was his sanctuary, his reward, his hard-earned slice of the American dream. He could picture it already. Lazy weekends floating in that cool water, maybe inviting some old buddies from the force over for a barbecue, laughter echoing through the yard. For once, he wasn't the cop on call, the guy with the badge and the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was just Michael, a man who'd fought for something beautiful and won. But that joy, that fragile, perfect peace was about to be tested. Beneath the surface of this idyllic scene, trouble was brewing. Trouble in the form of a nosy, entitled neighbor who couldn't stand to see him thrive. Little did Michael know, his dream was about to become a battlefield, and the serenity he'd earned would soon be pierced by the wail of police sirens. From the moment Michael Carter moved into his dream home, Karen Thompson cast a shadow over his joy like a storm cloud rolling in on a perfect summer day. She wasn't just a neighbor, she was a menace, a woman whose entitlement oozed from every pore, dripping with condescension and barely veiled racism. The first time he caught her, staring from her second-floor window, phone pressed to her ear, her eyes narrowed with suspicion, Michael felt a flicker of unease. He waved politely, hoping to start things off on the right foot, But she vanished behind her curtains like a ghost, leaving him with a sinking feeling. That unease turned to outrage the next day when his security camera pinged while he was at the hardware store. There she was, Karen, strutting through his unlocked back gate in a designer swimsuit, a luxury beach towel slung over her shoulder, acting like his pool was her personal playground. His pool, the one he'd dreamed of, worked for, sacrificed for, was now her stage, and she didn't even have the decency to ask. When Michael confronted her, the smugness on her face made his stomach churn. "Oh, I thought you were the new pool maintenance man," she said, her voice dripping with fake surprise, her hand fluttering to her chest like some southern belle in a bad play. The implication stung, a sharp, ugly jab at his race, his place in this upscale world he'd fought to join. His blood boiled, but years on the force had taught him to keep his cool. "I'm the owner, ma'am," he said, voice steady as steel, "and I'd appreciate it if you asked permission before coming onto my property." Her response was a laugh, a nervous, brittle sound that cracked through the air, followed by a muttered, "We'll see about that." It wasn't just a brush-off, it was a declaration of war. Over the weeks, she escalated her intrusions, bringing friends for pool parties, peering through his windows, even trying a key from the previous owners like she had some divine right to his space. Each trespass felt like a slap, a reminder that to her, he didn't belong. Karen's smug smile as she peeked from her house while police, called by her, approached Michael's fence was the final twist of the knife. She thrived on this chaos, feeding off the power she wielded with her lies and her connections. Michael's dream home, his sanctuary, was becoming a prison under her watchful, spiteful gaze. Every splash in his pool she stole, every boundary she crossed, chipped away at the peace he'd earned. But beneath his calm exterior, a fire was kindling, a quiet, resolute anger. This wasn't just about a pool anymore, it was about dignity, and about reclaiming what was his. Little did Karen know, her reign of petty terror was about to crash down around her. The war between Michael Carter and Karen Thompson wasn't a slow burn. It was a wildfire, raging hotter with every outrageous stunt she pulled. What started as petty trespassing morphed into something darker, more invasive, as Karen's obsession with undermining Michael took root. One Saturday morning, he woke to the sound of laughter and splashing. His heart sank as he peered out, his window to see Karen hosting a full-blown pool party in his backyard. 4 of her friends lounged by his pool, their designer swimsuits gleaming, their voices grating against his nerves. "Oh, don't be difficult," she waved him off when he demanded they leave, her dismissive tone slicing through him like a blade. His sanctuary, his pride, reduced to her personal country club, and she didn't even care. Her friends squirmed, one whispering, "Karen said she had permission," but she just smirked, daring him to challenge her. Michael's hands trembled, with fury, but he leaned on his police training, keeping his voice even. "This is your final warning. Next time, I'm calling the cops." He made good on that promise days later when she pushed too far, hosting her book club by his pool. 8 women sipping wine on his property like it was theirs. The audacity burned in his chest, a molten mix of disbelief and betrayal. When Officers Davis and Martinez, his old colleagues, arrived, the sight of their familiar faces brought a fleeting comfort, until Karen turned on the waterworks. "He's harassing us," she wailed, crocodile tears glistening, claiming some imaginary pool privileges from the previous owners. Michael's gut twisted as she played the victim, but his brothers in blue saw through her. "Mike was one of our best," Martinez said, shutting her down. "If he says you're trespassing, you're trespassing." Watching her storm off, humiliated, should have felt like victory. But her hissed threat, "This isn't over," lodged in his throat like a stone. She meant it. Karen's retaliation hit harder. Anonymous complaints flooded the HOA about his unkempt yard, His pristine lawn, a lie so bold it made him laugh through the anger. His morning paper vanished, security footage catching her sneaking it at dawn. She even poisoned his roses, the ones he'd planted to honor his mother, their wilted petals a punch to his soul. At the HOA meeting, her smug concerns about property values, aimed squarely at him, drove the knife deeper. But Michael wasn't breaking. He'd spent 15 years facing worse than her. He knew how to fight back. With every camera he installed, every clip he saved, he built his case, his resolve hardening. This wasn't just about a pool or a house anymore. It was about survival, about proving he belonged. Karen thought she could bully him out, but she'd underestimated the man she was up against. The storm was brewing, and Michael was ready to turn the tables. Michael Carter had endured enough. Karen Thompson's relentless trespassing, her smug entitlement, her venomous campaign to ruin his peace, it had pushed him to the edge. But instead of snapping, he channeled that simmering rage into something sharper, something clever. Sitting by his pool, now tainted with dish soap from her latest sabotage, he felt the sting of violation deep in his chest. The bubbles mocked him, floating lazily across the water he'd once seen as his refuge. Yet, as the sun dipped low, a spark ignited in his mind, a plan so perfect it almost made him laugh. This wasn't about revenge in the loud, messy way. It was about justice, served cold and green, with a twist of genius only a man who'd spent 15 years outsmarting crooks could dream up. He remembered a case from his police days, a non-toxic pool dye his old partner had mentioned, safe, legal, and invisible until it met certain chemicals, like those in the fancy sunscreens Karen and her posse slathered on. The thought of her, pristine skin turning a garish, undeniable green sent a thrill through him, a flicker of joy cutting through the exhaustion. This wasn't just petty payback, it was poetic, a lesson she'd never forget. He dove into research with the precision of a detective, ordering the dye, testing it in a bucket with her discarded sunscreen. When that water bloomed a vibrant, ridiculous green, he grinned, a real, soul-deep grin, for the first time in weeks. It wouldn't hurt her, wouldn't break any laws, but it would humiliate her, and that felt like victory. Michael set the stage like a mastermind. He added the dye to his pool, the water staying deceptively clear, a trap waiting to spring. Extra cameras went up, their tiny lenses glinting with promise, every angle covered, every second ready to be immortalized. When he overheard Karen plotting another unauthorized pool party, his heart raced, not with dread but with anticipation. "He's gone all day Saturdays," she bragged loudly, and he played along, driving off just far enough to fool her before, slipping back to his office, phone in hand, watching the app like a hawk. The wait was electric, his pulse pounding with a mix of nerves and glee. This wasn't the tired cop anymore. This was Michael the strategist, reclaiming his ground. As Karen sashayed through his gate at 2 p.m., her friends trailing behind, he settled in, ready for karma to take the wheel. The pool sparkled innocently, a siren call to her arrogance, and he knew. This was the moment she'd learn what happens when you push a good man too far. The moment Karen Thompson hit the water, Michael Carter's world shifted from quiet fury to triumphant glee. She dove in with the grace of a queen, oblivious to the chemical dance unfolding beneath the surface. Her friends followed, splashing and laughing, their designer swimsuits gleaming under the Atlanta sun, until the green started creeping in. It began subtly, a faint tint on Susan's arm, then exploded into a vivid St. Patrick's Day nightmare. Karen's shriek pierced the air, a sound so raw it could have shattered glass, and Michael, watching from his office, felt a rush of pure, unfiltered satisfaction. Her pale skin, once her pride, was now a glowing emerald, her hands clawing at the air as if she could wipe it away. Panic erupted, women scrambling from the pool, green streaks running down their faces, their perfect makeup melting into a comical mess. "My daughter's wedding," one wailed, staring at her lime-tinted legs, and Michael's chest shook with silent laughter. The exodus was chaos. 6 green-tinted divas sprinting through the neighborhood, dripping wet, leaving footprints of shame on the sidewalk. Michael's cameras caught it all, and when he stitched the footage together, Karen's trespassing history, her smug pool party, and that glorious green transformation, he unleashed it online. Set to her own jazz playlist, the video hit like a tidal wave, millions of views flooding in within hours. "Trespassing, Karen Gates Green with envy," screamed the headlines, and the internet erupted. Comment sections buzzed with glee, people piling on their own Karen tales, turning her humiliation into a movement. Michael watched the numbers climb, his heart swelling, not with spite, but with the sweet relief of justice finally tipping the scales. Karen's empire crumbled fast. Her real estate agency drowned in green emoji mockery, clients fleeing from an agent who couldn't respect a fence. Her WhatsApp group lit up with neighbors spilling her past sins, calling cops on kids, lemonade stands harassing the Johnsons, years of silence breaking like a dam. Her viral explanation video, green face glowing under harsh lights, only dug her deeper. Her community standards excuse laughed off as pathetic. Even her husband groaned at the golf club. She can't show houses. People think she's sick. The for sale sign in her yard 2 weeks later was the final bow. Her green tint fading, but her reputation stained forever. Michael didn't gloat. He just waved from his pool, a quiet king reclaiming his castle. Karen had pushed him to the brink, but he'd turned her weapon against her, and the world cheered him on. Her downfall wasn't just his win. It was a cathartic roar for anyone who'd ever faced a bully and dreamed of seeing them fall. Michael Carter's pool, once a battleground, transformed into a beacon of something beautiful after Karen's green-tinted collapse. The ripples of her downfall didn't just wash her away, they pulled the neighborhood closer, stitching together bonds she'd spent years fraying. Michael didn't revel in her exit with loud fanfare. Instead, he opened his backyard to the community, his heart swelling as he penned invitations for proper pool parties. The first time he fired up the grill, the scent of his famous ribs curling through the air, kids splashed in the water while parents laughed over lemonade. It was a scene he'd dreamed of, his sanctuary alive with joy, not spite. Tom, from 2 doors down, clapped him on the shoulder, voice thick with awe. 20 years here, and I've never known my neighbors till now." Michael's chest tightened, not with pride, but with gratitude. This was healing, raw, and real. Mrs. Rodriguez brought empanadas, her eyes soft with regret as she confessed Karen's past cruelties, reporting her 2 ethnic Christmas lights. The Johnsons shared how she'd tried to ban their kids' basketball hoop, and suddenly the air buzzed with stories, a collective unburdening. Michael listened, his quiet strength a lighthouse in their storm, and felt the weight of their trust settle on him. The new family in Karen's old house, an interracial couple with twin girls, fit like they'd always belonged, their daughters darting through the pool with Michael coaching their strokes. That framed photo by his gate, green, figures fleeing in chaos, became a quiet legend, a reminder of what he'd endured and overcome. He'd smile when asked, voice low, "Karma has a way of making a splash," and the warmth in his tone said it all. His pool parties grew into neighborhood lore, birthdays, swim lessons, summer nights where the water reflected laughter instead of tension. The HOA meetings, once Karen's stage for venom, turned short and sweet, complaints replaced by chatter about potlucks. When reporters pressed him, he'd shrug, that small smile flashing. "Everyone's welcome. Just ask first." It wasn't bravado. It was grace, the kind forged in fire. Even Karen's last gasp, griping about tennis courts in her new town, only made him chuckle, a distant echo he could float past. His pool wasn't just water anymore. It was a heart beating with connection, a symbol of standing tall and building something better. Every splash felt like a promise kept. Every shared meal a brick in a community he'd unwittingly saved. Michael Carter's story didn't end with Karen's defeat. It blossomed into a quiet, powerful lesson that lingered like the scent of chlorine on a summer breeze. Floating in his pool, the water cool against his skin, he reflected on the wild ride, how a bully's cruelty had pushed him to fight, not with fists, but with wit and dignity. His heart hummed with a strange peace, not because she was gone, but because he'd shown the world how to stand up without sinking low. The green-tinted chaos wasn't just revenge, it was a mirror, reflecting Karen's entitlement back at her until she couldn't hide. And in its wake, it left something stronger, a neighborhood reborn, a man unbroken, a legacy of grace under pressure. The takeaway wasn't lost on anyone. Online, people didn't just cheer. They connected, spilling their own Karen tales, finding solace in Michael's triumph. She got what she deserved, they'd type, but he saw it deeper. Karma didn't need his anger to work, it just needed his patience. That framed photo by the gate, a frozen moment of green panic, wasn't a trophy. It was a quiet nod to the power of holding your ground. He'd tell visitors, voice soft but firm, sometimes the best way to handle a bully is to let them trip over themselves. And the twinkle in his eye said he'd lived it. His pool, once a prize to defend, became a stage for teaching, showing kids to swim, showing neighbors to trust, showing himself he could bend without breaking. Karen's shadow faded, but her lesson stuck. When her moving truck rolled away, Michael raised a lemonade in his yard, not to gloat, but to toast the unity she'd accidentally sparked. The new family's twins racing through his pool, the Rodriguez kids giggling past her old house, the HOA's laughter drowning out her ghost. It all felt like proof that good could bloom from pettiness. He didn't need to shout his victory. The community did it for him, their warmth a balm on every wound she'd tried to inflict. Even her final flop, whining about tennis courts elsewhere, felt like a distant echo, powerless against the life he'd built. Michael's pool was more than luxury now. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to fighting smart and standing tall. If you've got a Karen, he'd muse to himself, let karma splash back. Just keep the cameras rolling. His story urged others to share, to rise, to find their own green-tinted win. As he floated, the water cradling him like an old friend he knew, the best revenge wasn't a boat.